Good afternoon. I'm Melinda Fouts, an international executive coach, and I'm here this afternoon with Peter Cook, well-renowned author of 7 books, rock star, and the innovator of Academy of Rock. Welcome, Peter.
Wow, what a build-up. How do we go down from here?
Peter, you have quite a unique niche where you have fused music with human dynamics in the work you do. Can you tell us how you arrived at that unique marriage?
Yeah, well, when I was about 5 years old, I wanted to be a musician, but I also quite liked science. And by the time I was 10, I realized I wanted to be more scientific than musical. So I had this sort of conflict, and I worked in pharmaceuticals for a long time, introducing new drug products to market, including things like human insulin and the first HIV products. So I was mad keen on science, but also mad keen on music. I kept that as a hobby. And then about the age of 29, 30, I became fascinated with business and management, because there's a lot of bad stuff out there as well as a lot of good stuff. And I thought, I really got to get into this. So I tutored MBAs for about 18 years. And over a lengthy period, I realized that music and science are not polar opposites, that music really is applied physics. And you start to realize that music and the arts and the sort of mathematical arts are separated at birth for people in education. They're told to be an artist or an economist, but they're not really so far apart. And so what I've done in a slightly cheeky way is to synthesize business, music, and science. And the science gives me this, I guess, the critical edge on the work that I do, because some people think that I'm just making this up because I like playing music.
Oh.
How dare they? And I've written a few books that help them, sort of have a go. Journalists, they like to sort of have a go. So I wrote a book called Sex, Leadership and Rock and Roll, and the BBC said, "Surely you're just having a lot of fun with business, Peter." And I said, "Yes, absolutely." Is there anything wrong with that? Because most business books I've read, and I've read dozens, are not that interesting.
No.
More recently, to be slightly serious, I've just got a book out here called Leading Innovation, Creativity and Enterprise for Bloomsbury, which I'm so proud of, because I never thought I'd ever write a book for the house of Harry Potter. The serious work.
Keep that book up there for a second. In that book of yours, Peter, that you just had, you write about the brain-based enterprises.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, this is a point at which we meet, because you do the emotional intelligence stuff, and you talk about the amygdala, and we have ideas about left and right brain, even though they've been discredited. But it's a handy catchphrase, the logic and the creativity. And a lot of us bring our creativity to work, but many of us keep it at home. Like, well, I can't bring my artistic side to work because someone might not like it because I'm an economist. But in fact, the best organizations in the world get people to bring all of themselves to work. Not all of themselves literally, but they want their brains, not just their individual brains, but collective intelligence. And collaboration is such an important part of any innovative enterprise now. You want the best of everyone to come to work, and for them to be fully engaged, what I call head, heart and soul. I think you have language for that in your own work as well.
Right. So the brain-based enterprises is about this bringing all of the creativity and collaborating together.
Yeah, not just your logical brain, but in fact your soul. I do a little bit of work for Virgin from time to time, and when we look at great organisations, they're not just bringing their conventional intelligence into work, their MBA, but they are bringing their attitude and their passion. And it's what Daniel Pink talks about when he says that, combining your passion with your purpose. It's an easy throwaway catchphrase, but if you really think about what that is, great organisations get people to come to work every day, bring their passions, and direct it towards a purpose.
That's right.
After all, that's all you could really ask for people who are coming to do a job for you, is to bring everything if they can.
Sure. When you know your passion, you can live your purpose and your dream.
Precisely.
And then combined with emotional intelligence, you're going to retain your employees that much longer.
So there's a big crossover into your work with emotion, 2.0 emotional intelligence. There's a big crossover there. And a great musician, I draw this parallel when I do seminars. Sometimes I do seminars and halfway through we get the executives to sort of play the guitar. And if they're not very good, I give them this guitar that's got no strings on it, or not even any. But I do make a serious point amidst the chaos. There's not chaos, amidst the sort of excitement of a seminar, that great musicians, and I've met a few great musicians, they are uniquely different than average musicians in this respect, that great musicians are not just living on the inner emotional intelligence competencies of their own their own excellence, but they're also paying attention on the outside to the rest of the group, using their eyes, their ears, and everything else. And great leaders are also emotionally intelligent because they listen to what's coming up across from customers. They're able to do that rather than getting bogged down in their own stuff.
I don't know if you know this, Peter, but I'm a classical musician.
I did know that a little bit. Tell me something about that.
I got my bachelor's in music theory and composition, so I'm really aware of how, as a team, you really need to listen. Whether you're musicians, you're listening to other players, and that has to happen in business. So you're using an operative word here of really listening to what's going on, what's being said, and what's not being said.
Yeah.
But I like your guitar piece that you have, because part of creativity and innovation is bringing in play. When we get our mind in a playful mode, we can be more creative and innovative.
Absolutely. And to be a great improviser, one needs to allow mistakes to happen. Perhaps we don't call them a mistake in business, but we do have to allow a little playfulness, and that will mean that occasionally things don't go according to plan. The skilled move, of course, is to learn from them quickly and not repeat them.
Right.
Applies to business as well as music. But yeah, creativity does require playfulness. It requires a few other things as well. But I think that's an underrated and undervalued part of most ordinary organisations' work. And we've done sort of extended programs of development for companies like Pfizer and people like that, Unilever, where one of the things that when they say they want to be creative, they usually don't say that they're going to be prepared to live through the odd mistake or failure. And that's a very, the F word is very difficult, but the greatest organisations do understand that to succeed sooner, fail more quickly and learn from it. And that is something that those great organisations, it marks them out from what you call the average, from the good to the great, as it were. So people say, well, what do you do in 4 words? I said, I teach people to improvise. But in a business...
Well, in the world of emotional intelligence, that's agility and flexibility.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And and during these times of uncertainty and ambiguity, how do you address that in your leadership program? I think you have an acronym called VACU, VACA, VUCA.
VUCA.
VUCA. VUCA.
We have a model.
And I'm flexible and adaptable.
Exactly.
VUCA.
So VUCA stands for a volatile world, an uncertain world, a complex world, and a world that's ambiguous. And much of business now is not really like it used to be, where you could have a 10-year plan and expect the world to follow it. Disruption in the world, and disruption through business strategies and sort of disruptive innovators mean that businesses have to be far more nimble and adaptive than they ever were. So one response to ambiguity and uncertainty is just to freeze and do nothing. And that isn't very helpful for businesses, because they just or carry doing the same stuff, which I call headbanging. So headbanging gives you a headache, but headbanging in business means you keep making the same products, but nobody wants them anymore. Right. And so in a VUCA world, the adaptive organisation, the learning organisation, all of these interchangeable terms isn't just a nice concept you can read in a book from Peter Senge and his colleagues. It's absolutely essential. Just being able to stay alive and bumping along is no longer enough. And the good companies that sort of managed to do this, and we looked at Fujifilm, Virgin, Nokia, Pfizer, some other companies, W.L. Gore, who've always been good at this, at sort of allowing people a bit of thought space to do experimental projects, and the sort of 3Ms of the world. They've always been quite good at letting people adapt and just try stuff. And if it didn't work out, that's not too bad, as long as you don't repeat it over and over again. So I think you do need to be able to improvise. Just freezing or carrying on regardless and headbanging are not good responses in a volatile world.
How do you get people to get out of that headbanging stage? Do you have a certain technique or trick, or you just hand them the guitar and say, go for it?
Yeah, we do use a visceral approach. We don't make a big deal of it. Rather than saying you're headbanging now, we just do something else, and suddenly they discover that. And particularly when they're out of their professional sphere, because headbanging happens in everyone's professional sphere because it's your sort of safe ground. So you think, if I keep doing this better or harder or quicker, it might be better. There are, of course, a lot of times that's true. But if you are facing a world where what you're doing is no longer valid, you can't headbang your way into the future. So we often give them alternative means to think about management and business. I draw parallels, and I get them to sort of play with dissonance in music. Is when two notes sort of shape together, as you will know as a pianist. And I cross that over to cognitive dissonance of what makes bad versus good decisions. And people often say, when they've looked at big decisions they've made, when it's been a bad one, that they knew it was bad before they made it. But somehow they headbanged their way into carrying on. So Tom Peters talks about pressing the stop button. I call it stop in the name of leadership. It sounds like a song, but sometimes in business you're compelled to carry on when in fact stopping and reflecting is much more powerful, and distracting yourself. So we use music as a means of getting people off the tram lines of thinking, and plenty of other things. Well, not just music. I mean, I use lots of helpful theories and painting, drawing, story writing, and other abstract thing, all what you would call in psychology projective ways into an existing problem.
Sure.
So if you keep doing what you're doing, you get the same result. So stop what you're doing, do something else is the sort of general idea there.
Well, when people make that decision, even though they know it's the wrong one, it's because they want to get out of a distressing situation.
Yeah, I bet you've got
hanging out in that ambiguity and uncertainty is really difficult for people.
And in your world, I think you've probably got plenty of examples where you've got methods of getting them to turn a different corner. Have you got any thoughts on that?
It's interesting because when I ask people, let's just hang out with the ambiguity, let's hang out with the uncertainty, they're like, no, I just want to get out of it. And
often.
So it's partly getting them to be comfortable with it. And like you used an operative word, some reflection. Start doing some reflection because your emotions are getting in the way and you want to get out of this discomfort, and it's only temporary. And so if you bring in some playfulness or creativeness and ask them, well, what else could you do, and push them to think of a never before thought of answer, then they're stretching themselves. They're being more innovative. They're being more creative. And you can't take life too seriously.
So we're doing the same stuff, but we're just doing it with different mechanisms, and and actually that's exactly the same thing. You've got to somehow push the stop button, or get them to push the stop button, and get them to do something different so they can see it from a different place. And that can be done verbally, it can be done visually, in different ways.
Right. When you use the word stop, I have a technique called the stop technique. You stop that mental chatter and you replace it with some positive mental thought. And that gets them changing their thinking process.
You've just given me a new technique in rock music. I suppose we might call it the STFU method. Shut the I forgot the next bit. Shut something up. I don't know what it is.
That's all right. So, what are the 4 areas of businesses that you address?
Right. So I work on creativity of getting great ideas, not just good ideas. Ideas that are sort of oven ready for the corporation. Turning inspiration into innovation, which, that isn't just getting oven ready ideas. You then got to execute them. So helping companies take an idea and take it to market. Sort of the skill of strategizing so that you can have a strategy that's flexible, bendable, and adaptable. And I guess leadership and change. Sometimes some of the work is entirely sensible. Where we go into a company that's going through a process of change, and we help the company. Your dog's agreeing so much with the dog is loving this. So organisation development and change. We're on a drip feed basis. We might be there for a couple of years, but only there once a couple of months or a day or something. And our involvement tails off as the champions take on things. So we leave behind people that can carry it on. So that that is not like the sort of consultant that comes in and it only gets better while they're there. So we drip feed our input in, and it gets less and less, and the client's input takes off. So it isn't all rock and roll. Some of it's entirely sensible. And of course, the long-term stuff is perhaps the more sensible and long-term stuff where we're putting alongside that projects and things so that they get return on investment. But if people don't have much time and they want an hour seminar where I talk about creativity and illustrate it with a few Deep Purple or Lady Gaga riffs, then yeah, we do that as well.
So in those 4 areas, Peter, where do you find most of the companies get bogged down?
People don't like the word creativity in enterprises because they think it costs money and it's just people having crazy ideas, and they're right. Purposeful creativity leads to innovation, however. So when I I've run hackathons, brainstorming, whatever you want to call them for people, and I've seen so many creativity specialists say, "Oh, we're just going to go in there and have fun," and that's fine. But if you don't have a goal, the fun doesn't turn into anything valuable. So I always work up with companies. What are you trying to do? So that we know if there are any real constraints around which the thinking has got to fit. I think unstructured creativity against a problem that's ill-defined is absolutely a waste of everyone's time. So, I do believe that actually objectives and goals, as long as they're not, constraints are useful as long as they're not an absolute cage and there's just no space for any ingenious input. So when I ask for people to set up a structure for something we're trying to do, I ask them for the essential items that would help guide a good output.
Okay, like in music, you got a scale, you got a key.
Yeah, exactly.
You got the parameters in which to then create the music. So that structure is vital for a good outcome.
So structure is not an enemy of creativity. They're actually required.
Right.
As in music, as we know. I've worked with lots of bands in the evening who would open mic jam sessions, and good intentions are never enough.
No.
They all have to agree what the song is and the key and a couple of other things, and maybe then it works.
So the analogy of music to human dynamics is a brilliant one because we need the structure, we need to listen, we need to agree on the theme, the song, the goal. So is there anything else you want to tell us, Peter?
If people are feeling a bit nervous about sex here, I had a bit of trouble with a well-known pharmaceutical company in New York that they were very concerned about this. And the guy hadn't actually got past the title, and he pointed out that they didn't have sex at Pfizer, and I had to correct him. But he had assumed that there would be bad language and all manner of things that were terrible, nudity and other things in my seminars. And unfortunately, we don't do them. There isn't even any sex. But if people are worried about that title in certain parts of the world, then I did this other book, which is entirely safe, called The Music of Business. It sounds very worthy, and it's got a crossover between these ideas of music and business. And I even managed to get Harvey Goldsmith to say some nice words, the man that did Live Aid. And I did that purely through a bit of a planned accident at a networking event. But yeah, do check out the website. I have two websites. The Human Dynamics one is www.humdyn.co.uk. That's the sort of serious OD strategy, no guitars involved generally. And then I have the Academy of Rock, which is www.academy-of-rock.co.uk. Or if you're Irish, it's Academy of Rock. I'm on Twitter on Academy of Rock. So I'm easy to find. There's a lot of stuff we've talked about here. I've probably overloaded this chat with that. But yeah, I'd be happy to talk. And I'd love to find a way of melting your input on emotional intelligence on a one-to-one with some of the sort of stuff that we do in a group sense, because much of my work is with groups and larger groups. But of course, if you're only doing an hour, that's not enough to get real change to happen at work. For that, you need a coach, a mentor, and someone can really give you a push on the ideas. And that's, of course, where your work comes in so valuably.
Yeah, I think it's a good marriage, because we've got to get them looking at themselves, listening to themselves so they can listen to others.
Absolutely.
But I would highly recommend Peter's books. Don't shy away from the one that begins with sex, because if you open the cover, you might learn something.
I don't know what's on the cover, inside the cover.
Anyway, Peter, thank you for your time. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Melinda. It's been a lovely dialogue.
We'll do this again.
Indeed we will.